I'm Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast. Today, I had an amazing conversation with Emily Morse, a sexologist, author, and host of the podcast Sex with Emily. We talked about sex, a subject that is often still considered taboo, why we're having less of it, how to stop having shame when talking about it, how to increase our sex IQ, the most common challenges when talking about sex, and much more. Here are 6 key takeaways from my conversation with Emily Morse. Key takeaway number 1. Regular touch and talk brings more life satisfaction and longevity. As it turns out, we're having less sex than previous generations, but this decline is most prominent amongst younger folks, while those in relationships maintain their intimate routines. It seems that today's younger generation is finding satisfaction elsewhere and is not prioritizing sex as much. Emily drew attention to the strong correlation between physical touch and happiness. She underscored that those with regular physical intimacy enjoy more life satisfaction and longevity. This goes beyond sex to include simpler gestures like holding hands or cuddling, addressing our primal skin hunger. We discussed the impacts of the pandemic on touch starvation, highlighting the increased demand for massages and companionship. Interestingly, we also looked into the evolution of sex talks. While there is more openness today compared to 2 decades ago, the level of specific discussion about sex remains limited. The omnipresence of porn without adequate sexual education creates a problematic knowledge gap. Despite the progress, challenges remain, such as the hesitancy to mention sex in media titles due to algorithm restrictions. Key takeaway number 2. Prioritizing pleasure is productive and can enhance our overall well-being. Emily argues that while we live in a time of relative sexual liberation, conversations about sex, especially pleasurable sex, still carry an unwarranted amount of shame and reticence. She highlights the more progressive approach to sex education in the Netherlands, where from a young age, children are taught about body parts, consent, and even the concept of pleasure in a non-threatening, normalized manner, in stark contrast to the fear-based methods adopted in many other countries. Emily also lamented the widespread lack of understanding of the female orgasm and the persistence of the orgasm gap. Noting that many women suffer silently from pain during sex, she is on a mission to improve the quality of sex for all by fostering an open dialogue and disseminating accurate, pleasure-focused information. She's penned a book dedicated to this mission, offering a comprehensive guide to sexual health and empowerment. Emily also emphasizes the importance of prioritizing pleasure in our daily lives. She asserts that pleasure is productive and that incorporating it into our daily schedules can enhance our overall well-being. Emily even has a formula in her book to help readers identify and integrate sources of pleasure into their lives. We reflected on the irony of how our technology-fueled, productivity-obsessed society leaves little room for unbridled joy, pleasure, and personal fulfillment. Emily's words serve as a compelling call to action. Let's talk about sex, pleasure, and how to make both a priority in our lives. Key takeaway number 3. Stress, shame, and trauma are 3 main pleasure thieves. Emily underlined the importance of being intentional about sex, regardless of societal shyness towards the topic. She highlighted 3 major pleasure thieves in our lives: stress, shame, and trauma. Stress and anxiety steal our focus from our bodies, affecting our ability to prioritize pleasure. Shame, stemming from body image or societal norms, makes intentional connected sex a challenge. And unresolved trauma, be it minor or major, can cause us to disassociate during sex, making it less enjoyable. Morse then touched on the vital role therapy plays in addressing these issues. She urged everyone to view therapy as a beneficial tool, likening it to a second opinion on life, which everyone can use at some point. Next, we delved into the effects of certain medications like antidepressants and birth control pills on our libido and sexual health. We discussed the importance of being aware of these side effects and the need to consult with doctors about potential alternatives. Interestingly, we also talked about a study showing that women who met their partners while on birth control, but later stopped using it, reported lower sexual satisfaction, indicating that birth control could potentially affect partner selection. This vital information is rarely shared with women when they start using contraceptives, highlighting the need for better education about the potential impacts of these drugs on our lives. Key takeaway number 4. The right environment can help stimulate dialogue about sex and improve communication. Emily emphasized the 3 T's of communication: timing, tone, and turf. For initiating open dialogues about sex, optimal timing, a light and curious tone, and a non-sexual setting form the foundation of constructive conversations. She advocated for conversations from a place of curiosity, compassion, and collaboration, rather than becoming defensive or hostile. She stressed the importance of active listening and repeating back what your partner says to ensure understanding, which resonates with my belief that the best communication comes from genuine understanding. Interestingly, Emily emphasized that these dialogues should be ongoing rather than a one-off occurrence. Much like discussing personal goals, work, or health, sex should be regularly discussed with your partner. This, according to Emily, eliminates confusion, resentment, and misunderstandings around sex. For those apprehensive about broaching the subject, she suggested using sexual compliment sandwiches to convey constructive feedback. This involves starting with a compliment, followed by constructive criticism, and concluding with a positive outcome for both parties. The conversation touched on the prevalent issue of performance anxiety, with Emily's reassuring words that it's normal to have insecurities and fears, and that intimacy is more about connection and collaboration than physical perfection. Key takeaway number 5. Women typically want a slower pace in the bedroom. We dive deep into the desires and challenges women face in their intimate relationships. Emily stressed that women crave a slower, more deliberate pace in the bedroom, emphasizing the importance of feeling desired, adored, and appreciated. Key to this is intentionality, plenty of compliments, and keeping sexual energy alive between encounters. Comparing women to slow cookers and men to frying pans, Emily shared that women typically need more time and stimulation to become aroused. We also explored the importance of initiating sex in relationships. Emily explained that typically there's a high desire partner and a low desire partner, with the former commonly driving sexual initiation, which can lead to feelings of rejection and unfulfilled desire. She suggested that initiating sex is a skill that can be learnt and suggested proactive conversations about initiating more often. If one partner isn't inclined to spontaneously initiate, Emily suggests understanding their arousal triggers and planning around them. Emily emphasized the importance of smart sex, a concept involving understanding personal arousal and desire. She advised seeking explicit direction from partners about what they find sexy to take the fear out of initiation. In the end, the message was clear. The key to a successful, satisfying sexual relationship is open, honest communication, understanding, and sharing of desires and needs. Key takeaway number 6. Men are not always ready for sex, and that's okay. We unpack the societal pressures on men to be perpetually ready for action and the damaging stereotypes that can propagate. Emily emphasized the importance of normalizing conversations around men not always being in the mood for sex, dispelling the myth of constant readiness. It's critical to recognize that it's okay for a man to be tired, stressed, or simply not in the mood, and not feel any less masculine for it. We also discussed women's sexual satisfaction, or lack thereof, during penetrative sex. Emily stressed that the main reason for women not reaching orgasm during sex is the lack of adequate stimulation, specifically of the clitoris, before and during penetration. It's about knowing and understanding the female anatomy, as well as ensuring sufficient foreplay and arousal before penetration. Emily introduced the concept of recursive self-thoughts, a psychological phenomenon where thinking about not reaching climax prevents it from happening. It's about the mind game that affects both sexes, creating performance anxiety which inhibits sexual pleasure. To combat this, she recommends mindfulness and meditation as a way to remain present during sex, offering practical tools and techniques to ensure both partners are comfortable, relaxed, and above all, connected. Remember, sex isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I'm Chris Williamson, and I'd like to thank you for listening to this PodFast summary of my conversation with Emily Morse of the Sex with Emily podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. See you next time.